She'd walked that same corner for 2 years without incident and figured her dogs were simply being dramatic about nothing. Josephine Aldridge Osei walked the same 3-block loop with her 2 Bulldogs, Cornelius and Beatrix, and 3-year-old Wilhelmina every single afternoon, rain or shine, and considered herself thoroughly familiar with every curb and crossing on the route. That familiarity was exactly what made her slow to take her dogs seriously when they started balking at one specific corner. For nearly a week, both Bulldogs would stop dead at the curb outside the Aldridge Osei's regular crossing, refusing to step off it even with Wilhelmina tugging at their leashes, planting themselves like 2 immovable little tanks. Josephine assumed they were simply distracted by a scent or being uncharacteristically stubborn that particular week. She'd wait a beat, tug the leashes gently, and they'd eventually comply. That detail would matter. She didn't clock it yet. By the 4th day, the stopping had sharpened into something more deliberate. Both dogs angling their bodies to physically block Wilhelmina from stepping past them onto the curb's edge, a low, synchronized huff that hadn't been part of their routine before that week. Her neighbor, walking her own dog nearby, mentioned offhand that the stop sign at that corner had recently been knocked down in a minor accident and hadn't yet been replaced. Josephine, 2 years of walking that same corner without a single close call, hadn't thought to check the sign itself. She navigated the crossing from memory and habit, not from actively reading the intersection each time. The 5th day, with both Bulldogs blocking harder than she'd ever seen, refusing every attempt to move forward, Josephine finally paused and looked at the intersection properly, instead of walking it on autopilot. The stop sign was indeed missing, the pole bent at an angle, easy to miss unless you were looking for it directly. Moments later, a car came through the intersection at a speed that made it clear the driver hadn't expected to need to stop there at all, passing through the exact spot Wilhelmina would have stepped into moments earlier. Josephine stood frozen on the curb for a long moment after the car passed, Cornelius and Beatrix still planted firmly in front of Wilhelmina, task apparently complete. She called the city's public works line that same afternoon. The dispatcher confirmed the sign had been reported down 3 days earlier, but hadn't yet been prioritized for replacement. Information that hadn't reached the neighborhood in any way Josephine would have encountered on her regular walk. Missing signage like that is exactly the kind of hazard that doesn't announce itself until it's almost too late, the dispatcher said. Good thing something made you all pause there. Josephine sat on her own front steps for a long time after that call. Cornelius and Beatrix's synchronized stopping day after day at the exact same curb. Not stubbornness. 2 years of walking that corner from memory hadn't prepared her to notice a missing sign the way 2 alert, low-slung dogs apparently had. The blocking, the huff, the refusal to move. Not distraction. 2 very ordinary dogs insisting on something that turned out to matter enormously. If you love stories about what animals notice before we do, subscribe. When Animals Act posts a new one every week. A temporary stop sign went up at that corner within 2 days. Cornelius and Beatrix crossed normally again the very next walk, task instinctively finished. Has your dog ever refused to move somewhere for a reason that only made sense later? Tell us in the comments below. Wilhelmina still holds both leashes tightly at that corner out of habit now, though there's no longer anything to guard against. If this story mattered to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Next week's story is about a Great Pyrenees who refused to let a toddler near a specific patch of grass for 3 days straight.